Ryan Wu gazed out at the Manhattan skyline from his penthouse office, the golden hues of sunset reflecting off glass towers he'd once dreamed of owning. At 42, he had achieved everything he ever wanted. As the founder and CEO of Visionary Soft, a tech company known for its groundbreaking innovations, Ryan was celebrated in magazines, on TV, and in boardrooms across the world. But in the quiet moments, when the buzz of success faded, he often felt like something was missing. One evening, as Ryan poured himself another glass of bourbon, a ritual he'd grown uncomfortably accustomed to, a news segment on TV caught his eye. The broadcast featured the final performance of a young piano prodigy at Carnegie Hall. The boy, Leo Chang, no more than 8 years old, walked to the piano with confidence, his dark hair perfectly combed. There was an unshakable grace about him, a quiet determination that struck Ryan like a thunderbolt. He leaned closer to the screen, his heart pounding as the boy's amber eyes came into focus, the same eyes that stared back at him from his own reflection every morning. As he began to play, Ryan froze. There was something familiar in the boy's posture, the way he carried himself, and most of all in his amber eyes. The same eyes Ryan saw in the mirror every morning. In that moment, everything Ryan thought he had buried came rushing back. The choices he'd made, the love he'd left behind, and the son he'd never met. 8 years ago, Alice Kim walked into Ryan Wu's office, her eyes brimming with disbelief. She had just told him she was pregnant, but Ryan couldn't accept it. Visionary Soft, his fledgling startup, was at a critical stage, and he believed there was no room for personal complication. "We're too young," Ryan said, his voice cold and detached. "We're both chasing our careers. This isn't the time to be parents." Alice didn't cry. She just stood there silently, her eyes locking onto his as if memorizing his every word. Then she turned and walked away. Less than a week later, she resigned from her role as Visionary Soft's lead developer and disappeared from Ryan's life. Alice started over in a new city, where no one knew her story. Facing the challenges of single motherhood, she built a loving life for Leo with the unwavering support of her mother, Grace Kim, a retired music professor. Grace, who had taught at Juilliard, quickly recognized Leo's gift when he began playing complex melodies by ear at the age of 5. Meanwhile, Ryan poured himself into Visionary Soft, achieving unimaginable success. He graced the covers of business magazines, attracted investors, and expanded his empire. But in the quiet moments, as the city lights dimmed, Ryan couldn't stop himself from thinking about Alice and the child he'd never met. Alice, on the other hand, refused to let memories of Ryan overshadow her life. To her, Leo was everything. He grew up surrounded by music and the constant encouragement of his grandmother. Yet deep down, Alice knew the day would come when Leo would ask about his father, and she wasn't sure how she would answer. Ryan Wu sat in his car outside the Brooklyn Academy of Music, his hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. He had spent the past week researching Leo Chang, the piano prodigy who had consumed his thoughts ever since that night. According to an online schedule, Leo had a masterclass today. Ryan arrived an hour early, parking in a spot where he could see the entrance, unsure of how to approach the boy. Eventually, he saw her. Alice Kim stepped out of a sleek Volvo, helping Leo with a leather music portfolio. She looked as poised as ever, dressed in a navy blazer and slacks, though there was a new air of maturity about her. Leo, meanwhile, moved with confidence, his determined stride so reminiscent of Ryan's own. Unable to stop himself, Ryan got out of the car. "Ballet," his voice wavered. Alice froze. When she turned, her face was a mask of shock, quickly hardening into anger. "Ryan," she said coldly, "what are you doing here? I needed to see you and Leo." Ryan's eyes flicked to the boy, who was now watching him curiously. Alice instinctively moved between them, her protective stance unmistakable. "Leo, honey, go inside. Ms. Chen is waiting for you." "But Mom," Leo hesitated, glancing at the stranger. Alice forced a calm smile. "I'll be right there." Once Leo disappeared through the doors, Alice turned back to Ryan, her voice sharp. "What the hell do you think you're doing here? You have no right." "I know," Ryan admitted, his voice low. "But when I saw Leo on TV, I couldn't ignore it. I had to come. I want to do the right thing, Alice. For you and for him." Alice let out a bitter laugh. The right thing? You think showing up now makes up for 8 years of silence? Leo doesn't know who you are. He doesn't need you. But I need him, Ryan said firmly, his eyes steady. Please, Alice, just give me a chance. Alice studied him for a long moment before sighing. If you really want this, start by not making things worse. Leo needs stability. Don't disrupt his life. Ryan nodded. He knew the road ahead would be difficult, but he was ready to face it. This was the beginning of his redemption. Ryan Wu began taking small steps to rebuild trust with Alice and Leo. He didn't rush. Instead, he showed up consistently at Leo's piano lessons, keeping a respectful distance but demonstrating genuine care. Although Leo was initially cautious, he gradually grew used to Ryan's presence, especially as he realized they shared a mutual curiosity about music and stories behind the pieces he played. Ryan wasn't musically skilled, but he found ways to help Leo during practice sessions, offering encouragement and practical advice for tackling difficult passages. Why don't you try slowing this part down a bit? Ryan suggested one evening. Leo glanced at him, curious, and gave it a try. That's better, Ryan said, and for the first time, Leo offered a small smile in return. Alice watched all of this unfold with guarded skepticism. Each time Ryan showed up, memories of the past, his abandonment, her pain, resurfaced. But seeing how Leo began to open up to Ryan, she couldn't help but wonder if he was genuinely trying to change. A crisis arose when Grace, Alice's mother, suffered a sudden heart attack. Alice was overwhelmed, juggling hospital visits, work, and supporting Leo as he prepared for an important competition. Ryan stepped in immediately. He picked Leo up from school, took him to lessons, and stayed with Alice at the hospital. Thank you, Alice said quietly one late night as they sat outside Grace's recovery room. I didn't think you'd stay. It's what I need to do, Ryan replied, his voice steady. I'm done missing out. As Grace began to recover, she took notice of Ryan. I didn't think much of you before, she admitted during a private conversation, but I see you're trying for Leo. Don't make me regret trusting you. Ryan nodded, knowing he had a long way to go to prove himself. But he felt a shift. Leo started to share more about his piano lessons, his favorite things, and even his deeper feelings. Do you play the piano, Dad? Leo asked one day. Not as well as you, Ryan laughed, but if you teach me, I'll learn. The relationship between the three of them began to take shape. Ryan realized that it wasn't just Leo who needed him, he needed Leo too. The boy became the reason for him to change, to be the kind of father Leo could be proud of. As Leo Chang approached the day of his competition at Carnegie Hall, the pressure mounted. Practice sessions became more intense, and Alice stayed close, ensuring that Leo didn't overexert himself. But everything took a sudden turn when the competition committee announced a new rule. Leo would need to perform a completely different piece, Bach's Partita in D minor, with only 2 weeks to prepare. Alice was distraught. This is too much for him, she said to Ryan one evening after practice. He's already working so hard. Leo can do it, Ryan replied, sounding more confident than he felt. I'll help him. Ryan made a bold decision. He stepped down as CEO of Visionary Soft. The board was furious. You're walking away from everything, one member said. This is the most critical moment in the company's history. No, Ryan replied. I'm prioritizing the most important thing in my life. Leo practiced relentlessly, but his obsession with perfection began to take a toll. One night, while struggling with the complex middle section of the piece, Leo stopped, tears spilling down his cheeks. I can't do it, he said, his voice trembling. It's too hard. Ryan sat beside him. You don't have to make it perfect, Leo, he said gently. You just need to make it yours. Let your music tell the story you want to share. Something in Ryan's words struck a chord with Leo. In the following sessions, the boy began infusing his unique interpretation into the piece, focusing on emotion rather than pure technical precision. The day of the competition at Carnegie Hall. Carnegie Hall was packed. Ryan, Alice, and Grace sat in the front row, anxiously watching as Leo walked onto the stage. In his crisp black suit, the boy bowed to the audience before settling at the piano. The first notes rang out, tentative but filled with feeling. Leo wasn't just playing Bach's Partita, he was telling his story. The musical themes carried an emotional depth rarely seen in someone so young. The middle section, where he'd struggled most, now radiated with raw emotion, struggle, hope, and an emerging confidence. As the final notes faded, the hall was silent for a beat before erupting in thunderous applause. Leo stood, bowing gracefully, but his eyes immediately sought out his family. Alice was crying, Grace was beaming with pride, and Ryan stood clapping louder than anyone. After the performance, Alice turned to Ryan, her voice choked with emotion. "Thank you, Ryan. Leo couldn't have done this without you." "No," Ryan said, his eyes on Leo. "He did it all. I'm just a small part of his story." After the performance at Carnegie Hall, Leo Chang not only won the competition, but also touched the hearts of everyone in the audience. Yet, for Ryan Wu, Alice Kim, and their small family, the true victory lay in the healing that music had brought to their lives. A year later, Ryan sat in the same seat at Carnegie Hall, this time to watch the premiere of Leo's first symphony, the Symphony of Redemption. The hall was packed, not just with spectators, but also with critics and renowned composers. On stage, Leo, now 9 years old, stood confidently at the microphone. "This piece tells the story of my family," he said clearly. "It's about loss and forgiveness, about the music we create between heartbeats, and about how love sometimes takes the longest road home." Ryan listened, recalling the moments that had brought them to this point. The early morning practices, the long nights at Grace's hospital bedside, and the lessons they had all taught one another along the way. The symphony began with a single note, long and pure, the sound of Leo's birth. Then, the melodies intertwined, carrying complex emotions, separation, hope, and belief. The climaxes echoed Alice's journey, her sacrifices and resilience as a single mother. Grace's influence appeared in graceful and supportive harmonies, much like her quiet strength during their hardest times. As the symphony built to its peak, Ryan recognized the familiar strains of Hospital Nights, the piece Leo had written during their time at the hospital. The symphony concluded with a harmonious melody, where all the themes wove together perfectly, symbolizing a family made whole again. When the final notes faded, the audience erupted into thunderous applause. Ryan turned to Alice and Grace, both visibly moved. "We did it," Alice whispered. Outside Carnegie Hall, Leo held Ryan and Alice's hands, his eyes filled with hope. "Mom, Dad, I've already started thinking about my next piece. It's going to be about where we're going, not where we've been." Ryan smiled, squeezing Leo's hand. They had taken the longest road home, but they had found their way, together. Now they were ready to move forward, creating a new symphony, a symphony of redemption. After the Carnegie Hall performance, Ryan didn't just focus on building his relationship with Leo. He also began the challenging process of healing with Alice. It wasn't an easy journey. The wounds of the past, the words left unsaid, and the sacrifices Alice endured over 8 years were significant barriers. But Ryan persisted, knowing that to truly be a part of Leo's life, he needed to understand and support Alice too. It started slowly, with brief conversations. One day, while driving Leo to his piano class, Ryan invited Alice for coffee. She agreed, not because she had forgiven him completely, but because she believed Leo deserved to see his parents working together. At a small cafe near Leo's school, Alice hesitantly opened up about the struggles of single motherhood. "There were days I didn't know how I'd make it," she said, her voice steady but heavy with emotion. "But looking at Leo, I knew I couldn't give up." Ryan listened, resisting the urge to interrupt. "I wish I could change the past," he said, his eyes meeting hers. "But all I can do now is be better from here on." Ryan understood that regaining Alice's trust required more than words. It demanded consistent action. He became a steady presence in their lives, not just as Leo's father, but as a supportive partner for Alice. He picked Leo up from school, helped him prepare for competitions, and stayed up late talking to Alice when Leo was asleep. Over time, Alice began to see the sincerity in Ryan's efforts. One evening, after tucking Leo into bed, she invited Ryan to stay for dinner. It was a simple meal, but the atmosphere was warm. "You've changed a lot," she said, setting down her teacup. "Because I've realized what truly matters," Ryan replied. Without rushing to rekindle romance, they focused on co-parenting Leo. But as time passed, old feelings began to resurface, not loudly or dramatically, but gently and with hope. They started sharing more about the past, not to assign blame, but to better understand each other. Ryan and Alice eventually realized that their journey of forgiveness and healing wasn't just for Leo. It was for themselves too. Love, though neglected, had never truly disappeared. Now they had a chance to write a new chapter, this time with maturity and mutual respect. One late afternoon, Alice stumbled across a small box in her attic. Inside were keepsakes from her and Ryan's college days. There were photos, letters, and a small notebook where Alice had once written down melodies Ryan helped her refine during her piano practice sessions. Holding the notebook, Alice smiled to herself. "Do you remember this?" she asked Ryan when he came to pick up Leo that evening. Ryan glanced at it, his eyes widening with recognition. "I thought you would have thrown that away." "I couldn't," Alice admitted. "It reminds me of a time when everything was so much simpler." That evening, after Leo went to bed, Alice invited Ryan to look through the keepsakes. They sat together at the kitchen table, flipping through old photos of their younger selves, laughing by the river, staying up late in the practice rooms where Alice played piano while Ryan worked on his startup plans. "I always thought those days were just stepping stones to what I wanted to achieve," Ryan said, brushing his fingers over a photo of Alice beaming beside a piano. "But now I realize those were the moments that truly mattered." Alice looked at him, her eyes softer than before. "I was angry for so long, but I've learned that anger doesn't ease pain. Instead, I focused on Leo and what I could control." A week later, Leo convinced both his parents to join him for a picnic in Central Park. Ryan brought an old camera, deciding to capture every moment. Alice laughing in the sunlight, Leo jumping over small puddles, and all three of them sitting on the grass sharing a sandwich. When they returned home, Ryan printed the photos and hung them in Leo's room. "These are our new memories," he said as he placed the final frame on the wall. Alice began to open up more, not just about the past, but also about her hopes and fears for the future. One late night, as they sat talking in the kitchen, Alice admitted, "I'm scared that this is temporary, that you'll realize I'm not the girl you fell in love with anymore and you'll leave again." Ryan reached across the table, taking her hand, his gaze steady. "Alice, I'm not here to relive the past. I'm here for the present, for you and Leo, and I'm not going anywhere." As time went on, Alice realized that Ryan wasn't just trying to make amends. He had genuinely changed. He was no longer the selfish young man who put his ambitions above everything else. Instead, he had become a man who prioritized family above all. The moments they spent raising Leo together, sharing responsibilities, and even their simple daily conversations gradually erased the distance between them. Alice felt herself beginning to relax, and for the first time in years, Ryan felt the profound meaning of the word family. 2 years after the Carnegie Hall performance, Ryan and Alice had fully rebuilt their shared life. Their relationship was no longer just about Leo, but about the rekindling of a love once thought lost. Ryan was patient and steadfast, always prioritizing family, while Alice gradually opened her heart, learning to trust the man who had once caused her so much pain. When Ryan proposed to Alice during a quiet evening stroll in Central Park, he took her hands in his and spoke with a tremor in his voice. "Alice, I know I've made mistakes, more than I can ever undo, but I promise, from this moment forward, you and Leo will always come first." Alice's eyes filled with tears, her heart battling between fear and hope. Finally, she smiled through the tears and whispered, "Yes." This time, their love was not based on youthful infatuation, but on resilience and maturity, with Leo at the center of their renewed life together. The wedding took place in a small riverside garden, the same spot where Ryan and Alice had shared their first date as college students. Alice wore a simple white gown, her hair styled in an elegant bun, and her smile radiant. Ryan, dressed in a sleek gray suit, couldn't take his eyes off her as she walked toward him. Leo, now 10 years old, had a special role in the ceremony. He would perform a piece he had composed himself, a small symphony titled Love's Second Verse. As the guests settled into their seats, Leo approached the piano set in the middle of the garden, his eyes shining with confidence. Leo began playing the opening notes, a gentle and warm melody that seemed to narrate the story of his parents' first meeting. The following passages grew bolder, capturing the challenges they had overcome together. Finally, the piece ended on a tender, harmonious note, symbolizing the family's new beginning filled with hope and joy. As the final note lingered in the air, Alice couldn't hold back her tears. "You were incredible," she said, pulling Leo into a tight hug. Ryan placed a hand on his son's shoulder, his eyes glistening with pride. "You've made us so proud, Leo." Under the soft golden sunlight, Ryan and Alice exchanged vows. Ryan promised to always put family first, never repeating the mistakes of the past. Alice vowed to continue opening her heart, building a future with Ryan that they could both be proud of. As the ceremony concluded, the guests raised their glasses in a toast to the newlyweds. Grace, still vibrant in her 70s, took Leo's hand and said, "You didn't just play music, you told a story, the story of our family." That evening, as fairy lights twinkled against the night sky, Ryan, Alice, and Leo danced together to the lively rhythm of Leo's favorite music. In that moment, Ryan knew he had truly found the right path, the path home, to family.